Awesome. Hi, everybody. Um, so I'm Tal, and today I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the research that my colleagues and I have been doing looking at academic cheating. I'm just going to highlight two studies for today, but I'm happy to talk more about the kind of work that I do outside of this meeting. So I'm a postdoctoral scholar in the psychology department at University of California, San Diego. My background is in developmental psychology. I study moral development and people's everyday moral decision making in their own lives, with a special focus on adolescents and young adults. And so, kind of in that topic, I've ended up doing a lot of research on academic cheating and academic integrity. Um, Looking at like why people cheat and how we can promote academic integrity in college and in high school. And through this kind of work, this program research, we've done interviews with students and teachers, surveys, content analyses of actual records of cheating, naturalistic observations, and other studies. And a lot of this work has been in collaboration with Gail Heyman, who's a professor at University of California, San Diego, and with Auden Dahl, who was my PhD advisor back when I was at University of California, Santa Cruz, who has now moved to Cornell. Just to give you a little bit of like the context of where I'm coming from and the kind of work that I do. Um, and I'm just going to pick out some kind of like recent things that we've been doing to share with you. Just to give a really quick background, I'm sure this group has thought a fair amount about things like cheating, so I don't need to go a huge amount into detail about, why it's interesting to study, but I'll just put out there that I'm defining academic cheating as when a person violates academic rules that could be, they could be explicit or they could be implied rules. And that violation of academic rules, if it is carried out successfully, it would yield benefits to one or more students who are involved in that action. So that include things like, cheating to help another person or cheating to help yourself. So academic cheating is really interesting because it is, to an extent, it's a pervasive form of everyday deception. And by that, I mean that this is something that a lot of people do have firsthand experience with. Surveys of students in some of my work and others has suggested that well over 90% of students cheat at least once in school. So it's pervasive in the sense that a lot of people have experience with it, and it also has really critical consequences, It undermines our educational missions. It can pose threats to students' learning, their feelings of belonging in school, their retention in school. For example, they might not be able to declare a major, they could get kicked out if they're sanctioned for cheating. So it's pretty consequential, a pretty consequential form of deception. And so the work that I want to highlight a little bit today looks at the educator side of this story of of academic cheating, where how as educators are we creating trying to shape the classroom to try and promote academic honesty? How are we trying to detect cheating? So, and I think the educator's perspective is just super critical, and we really need to understand that side of the whole story of academic cheating. So, um, the title of my talk is How Easy Is It for Instructors to Detect and Deter Cheating? And to get at this question, I'm just going to highlight two recent studies that we've been doing, but I'm happy to talk more about the other kind of work that we've done beyond this meeting as well. Okay, so the first study that I'm going to highlight here is looking at how instructors can try to detect cheating in the form of like when students submit like an AI generated essay for their assignments. So the question here is, can teachers tell apart their students' essays from AI written essays? And this is done in collaboration with Celeste Pilligard and Gail Heyman. And there's a QR code for the paper if you want to go check it out. So since the public release of ChatGPT in late 2022, There have been a lot of conversations among students and educators about these kinds of generative AI tools being used to cheat, where students are using them to produce their work for them and turning it in. Um, and I've had conversations with teachers, and there's this idea out there that, don't use it because it's going to be so obvious to me. If you use it, I'm going to know. I'm just showing an example here of, one teacher posting about, don't use it to write your story. I will know if you do it. Here's another example of a meme that shows a student assignment turned in that starts off with, I'm sorry, but as an AI language model, I'm not able to complete this assignment. Um, just kind of showing some examples of this idea that, well, when students are using it, it should be pretty obvious to tell a lot of times um, uh, that they're doing it. But I want to just put it out there that sometimes it's not always so obvious. And I'm going to give you an example from the study that we did. And I want you to just think in your head and look at these two and try to pick out which one you think is AI generated, the one on the left or the one on the right. And these are actual stimuli from our study that we did with students and instructors. And what we did was we had students in an actual class for an exam in their class handwrite essays. It's a psychology class. And we gave the exact same prompt to ChatGPT as the students handwrote their essays for. And then we compared the real student work from class to the ChatGPT generated essays in response to the same prompt. So maybe you can look and see which one you think is the chatbot's essay. Hopefully you've got an idea of which one you think it is, or maybe you just don't know, but you just pick randomly. So I'm going to reveal the answer. So the one on the right was a ChatGPT generated essay, and the one on the left was a pretty typical student essay from the class. The class average was about 80%, and this student's essay received an 85% grade in the class. So just showing here that maybe your guess was right, but it can be pretty tricky, and a lot of times it's not going to be so cut and dry. As I'm sorry, as an AI language model, I cannot write this essay. So, and further complicating this is the fact that, I told you one of these two is a chatbot, and as an instructor, oftentimes it's a much harder challenge because you don't know for sure that one of two things is going to be AI generated. So there's a lot more uncertainty involved. Just trying to show to you that this is a pretty challenging task. And I'm going to show you some of the results of how our participants performed on this task. Keeping in mind that there's always two options, right? Is it this one or is it that one? And if you're doing super well at this, you'd be at 100%. If you're consistently wrong, you get 0%. And if you're totally guessing, you'd be right in the middle. So, how did instructors do? Well, we had about 140 instructors who completed this task across multiple pairs of texts. And we found that they are significantly above chance, but I want to note here, they are far from being always right. They were getting it right about 70% of the time. And you can imagine when someone's only right about 70% of the time, that could be really dangerous grounds for, pursuing or accusing or trying to sanction something. Okay, so that's how our college instructors did. How about students? Maybe since students are the ones who are actually writing these essays, they might actually do better. Well, it turns out students did even worse than instructors. They were significantly worse. Around 60% of the time they got it right. Well, okay, so maybe instructors and students aren't so great at this, but how about ChatGPT itself, right? It's the one that's generating these things. Well, ChatGPT, when we had it run through our whole study and 40 iterations of responses, performed not so great either, kind of in between the instructors and students. So I just want to show you here that like this is a really hard task. And also participants' familiarity with the subject matter, so experience with like psychology, or their familiarity with ChatGPT, like whether they'd used it or not, how much they had used it, and their overall confidence on how well that they would do on the task did not predict their accuracy. So we know that people are not so great at this. And there are also even like experience with the subject matter, experience with instruction doesn't seem to help a whole lot. So I just want to kind of in an interim takeaway here, highlight how, this poses challenges when we're thinking about detecting and reporting cheating and what this means for equity considerations in education. Already there have been lawsuits out there in recent news cycles around students suing schools for disciplining them for using AI. A lot of instructors have to grapple with this question of like, well, if my student says they didn't do it, but I'm like, I have an AI detector that's telling me this is like 100% AI generated, like, what do I do? And also, I think there are like really interesting and important equity considerations here. One of the findings from our study was actually that students who don't speak English as a first language were more likely to say that they use ChatGPT, and they're also more likely to like rate it positively to use it. They like rated different uses of ChatGPT in classes as like more acceptable. So there are these equity considerations of if we do accuse students of using AI, there's a potential for really missing the mark a lot of the time. There's a lot of potential for false accusations. And also it runs the risk of the students that do get accused they could just be the ones who are really bad at kind of like covering their tracks, and they're really, really obviously using it. And that also poses concerns for disparities and, who gets reported and who doesn't. So I'm going to highlight a little bit from another study, shifting gears here, to ask a question about, okay, so detecting cheating can be pretty challenging. How about deterring cheating in the first place? So we can just, try to discourage students from even taking that step. And this is work that we're preparing for publication in collaboration with a wonderful high school intern and a really awesome team of high school interns and undergraduates and Gail Heyman, where we partnered with teachers in local high schools and actually did a study in their classes to see if we could potentially reduce cheating rates on an in-class quiz. So, there's research trying to get at, so what would deter students from cheating? And for a lot of this work kind of like asks for like student self-reported or self-reported opinions on the matter. And students might say things like, well, my teacher could have done things differently. But the challenge here is that we need more research on, what interventions actually work in the classroom, and then trying to measure actual cheating behaviors in those real contexts that they unfold, going beyond just like what students say they think would matter or that would stop them from cheating. Let's go and actually test some things to see what does reduce cheating, is the idea here. And in some of our work observing classrooms and discussions about cheating, we found that there are teachers rarely talk about cheating, like what it is or why it matters. And when they do talk about cheating, they mostly just give mere prohibition, saying like, just don't cheat, and they don't really further elaborate on it. If they do elaborate, they'll usually don't say like, don't cheat because I'm going to punish you. So, or I'm going to catch you and I'm going to punish you. And so another kind of like approach to this, question of deterring cheating, a theory-driven approach is to emphasize learning values, learning goals, and the intrinsic value of an assignment for students, which has been found in kind of correlational self-report studies to be related to less cheating, right? Where students think, I really care about this assignment and I care about learning versus I just want to get a good grade and, have a high performance. we see like less cheating in the intrinsically motivated students. So that led us to try and test this kind of intervention where what if we, the instructor emphasizes helping students learn and these kind of intrinsic learning values right before an assessment. So I'm going to ask you to imagine a scenario. So imagine you're a high school student, because it's done with high schoolers. Imagine one of your teachers gives your class a pop quiz that counts for your grade with questions that you can't answer. Afterwards, the teacher posts the answer key and asks everyone to grade it themselves and then turns away to do some work. And before grading, the teacher says a message, and we had two random conditions here. Either the helping learning message, which was, please do not cheat, because if you do, I won't know what material you don't understand, and then I can't help you learn as well. Or the control message, where they just said, please don't cheat. So I want you to, think for a second, imagine you're a high schooler. If you heard your teacher say that, would you change any of your answers on the quiz to give yourself more points? So that's the question. And so we first we asked this in a hypothetical scenario with students in the high schools that we partnered with, and we found the students said that they would change their answers significantly more often in the control condition of just don't cheat than the helping learning condition. But then when we went into the classrooms and actually, ran the study, we had the teacher say these messages and the classes were randomly assigned to either helping learning condition or control condition. We didn't find a difference between the two conditions. The rates of cheating were actually quite low between both conditions. They were pretty low, and there weren't any differences between them. So, I just want to kind of highlight some quotes from students about what they're thinking about like why we cheat. And here's just a few quotes from some of our high schoolers. One student said, some people get beat up for getting bad grades, so cheating on a pop quiz is valid, to be honest. Another student said, if the test doesn't make sense because the teacher makes it make zero sense, then it's okay to cheat. And another student said, school is hard, and a lot of people feel very pressured to succeed, so instead of learning at school, we're only focused on the task at hand. And I think that these students' open-ended responses are pretty revealing, that, just it can be difficult to deter cheating with a short-term intervention where we just emphasize something like learning goals, even if there are like these theory-driven reasons to think that it should help. You can see that students' decisions about cheating really, they exist in a larger like social and developmental context where they're having all of these experiences pushing them towards prioritizing other concerns over learning on that particular assignment. And that can be really hard to overcome by just a short-term intervention through like instructional messaging. So go back to the question of, how easy is it to detect and deter cheating, at least from these two studies that I highlighted today. It's not so easy. It's not always easy to tell, what's student work versus AI generated work. And it's not so easy to just, emphasize intrinsic values and get students to get on board with them because these decisions exist in a much larger socio-ecological kind of context. So just to discuss really quickly on where this leaves us, I think that it's important to recognize that there are many different causes of cheating. And so because there's so many different causes of it, there is no perfect one-size-fits-all solution to cheating. And instead, our remedies to cheating really ultimately need to be tailored to the different causes, whether that's in some cases a student not recognizing that something is a rule violation, or in other cases a student not finding a particular assignment intrinsically valuable, or in other cases a student just feeling like there are too many forces pushing on them all at once and they can't they have to prioritize something over another thing, and sometimes integrity loses out there. And I think that this sets the stage for future research needing to be done on the different reasons for cheating to really understand those different causes. And I think that this work exemplifies, or kind of builds up some fruitful approaches to doing this kind of future work. through building like educational partnerships in the classroom with teachers in schools. So I'm excited to, keep working on that direction in the future. And just want to say thanks to everyone, our awesome team. There's my contact info and my mentors and my amazing, amazing students who have collaborated with me on all this work and many more who weren't able to fit on the slide. So thanks, everybody.